Welcome back. It's me, and I'm in video form this time. You're watching the 4th today, and we have some cool stuff to talk about. So over the past week or two, or a month or so, the topic of NFTs have been brought up a lot. Today, we're going to be diving into the topic of this dystopian, utopian, futuristic feeling of a new type of purchasing attribute for cryptocurrency. If you were like me, nearly clueless to what an NFT was up until a few weeks ago, well, welcome aboard to this crazy discovery we have both found. If you've heard about them before, maybe you'll learn something new from this video. If not, just let me know what else could interest you in the future. Maybe you have heard slight talks about this on social medias and whatnot, or in the news regarding a Nyan cat, that little gif of the cat Pop-Tart thing with the rainbow behind it, selling for $600,000. Or Jack Dorsey's first tweet ever on Twitter being auctioned currently at $2.5 million, or the more notorious one that's been really catching everybody's eye, which is BeepleCrap's $69 million artwork that he sold just as of last week, I believe. Or maybe you even heard about the NFTs back in 2017 when CryptoKitties first started. And if you did, then I applaud you for that, because you are way ahead of the game compared to everybody else, I feel like, right now. Also, I think I should have a disclaimer here that I am in no way an expert in this field. I just started researching this topic last week or a week and a half ago. So please do not take financial advice from me. I will have my own opinions in here, but please do your own research before you really commit to anything. Even if you're not interested in investing into this technology or buying and selling and trading or whatnot, it's still interesting to learn about. And I think there's a lot of aspects that can be taken away and applied to different businesses or different ideas. I kind of see this as a very fundamental building ground for new ideas to be developed in the future. I'll try to do my best to share my thoughts and understanding of this technology, as well as some applications that businesses and industries can use from this, and overall my thoughts and ideas based around this technology. An NFT stands for Non-Fungible Token, which is a special variant of a cryptocurrency token with the purpose of representing something unique. So let's take a step back, because that sounds like a lot and it's kind of a complex definition. It doesn't really explain it fully. So we'll start at fungibility in the definition of that. So fungibility is defined by a piece of property, good, or commodity where the units are interchangeable. A good example of this is good old cash. By cash, I mean being able to change a $5 bill into 5 $1 bills if I had that much, but I don't. But you get the point. 5 $1 bills, 1 $5 bill. It's interchangeable. The value doesn't change, but the format of what you're carrying does. For NFTs, there is no fungibility. Reason for it being non-fungible token. In turn, this develops a rarity and scarcity around itself. This is one of the main reasons why NFTs are valued at such a high rate, because the rarity and scarcity that itself creates for itself is attractive for many investors. It is essentially an artificial development of scarcity. This also might sound basic, but NFTs should not be looked at similarly to a cryptocurrency itself. Cryptocurrencies is the currency that you use to purchase these NFTs. NFTs is in a sense like a art piece that you would buy with cash or debit. NFTs are also operated on a blockchain, and Ethereum is the most common one at the moment, to ensure security and traceability, as well as providing that scarcity, because once a product or an asset is created, there is no going back and changing that due to the blockchain's technology. So that in fact actually increases the scarcity of itself as well. But it's basically a one-off digital certificate of ownership for a digital asset. Digital assets in this regard can include JPEGs, GIFs like the Nyan cat, music, sports cards, assets in video games like real estate, and many more that I might not be aware of at the moment. So if you know of any other sorts of digital assets that people are currently into right now, please drop it down in the comments. So upon researching this, I kind of found it interesting and wanting to understand how the process of creating an NFT was, and if it was limited in any way to certain types of people, or how much experience that you need to have within the realm of this technology. So I basically went over to OpenSea, which is one of the the third-party sites where you can purchase NFTs using Ethereum. All the user needs is to set up a crypto wallet and head over to these third-party sites like OpenSea. After you're done setting up an account with the OpenSea or third-party website, you can begin to upload PNGs or the GIFs or whatever you want to include, along with text and whatnot, to disclaim if there's any other things that you're including that you cannot physically put into the image at the moment. Upon uploading this, all these digital assets, these become kind of your collection, and making a collection is absolutely free. You don't have to do anything with it. I think you do need a crypto wallet just to ensure that you have an ability to therefore receive money in the future. But other than that, it's completely free. After you have your collection, you're able to then start listing certain pieces within your collection as NFTs. And this is where the pricing can be decided along with future transfer fees, which I found kind of interesting, where once you sell the item, there's a secondary market where other people can purchase and sell, kind of like the stock market. One thing that the seller can put into the coding behind it is whether or not they receive a transaction fee for every single time that this asset is changing hands from a buyer to seller. So for instance, if I put up a NFT right now that's selling for like $60, I could put into the code that I want to receive 5% of the transaction cost every single time that somebody else buys it. When uploading these NFTs, there's also an option for the uploader or seller to list how many of these copies that will be going out for sale. So you can have a one-off, one of one kind that would obviously make the scarcity of your product rise. But if you want to sell like a large amount, like if you're trying to sell licensing rights for music, you can then list like 8 or 9 or 100, 200, 1,000 different copies that people are allowed to purchase, and then you can throw those up, and then that's how many that will forever be in circulation, and you can never change that again. Upon looking into this a little bit more, I was curious on whether or not there was like transaction fees on the third-party website or just in general, and I came to find that there's these things called gas fees. Gas fees are either paid by the buyer or the seller based on the style of uploading of NFT that you do. So there's essentially two options. So this fee can either be incurred by the buyer if it is listed as a fixed price, where the seller only lists it at $60. There's no negotiating or whatnot. Or if the seller is listing it as an auction, then the seller would have to pay for these gas fees. So hopefully that was a decent explanation on what an NFT was. If you don't understand, I think that you'll get the hang of it through some kind of use cases that are going on currently. Within these use cases, I'm going to start off with digital art. That has seemed to be the one that has drawn the most attention due to Beeple-Crap's $69 million collage art piece that I'll get to in just a moment. So as I promised though, going back to what I stated in the intro, here's that cookie for you. For just 0.15 Ethereum, or as of today, $266, you can own this digital fortune cookie, and it comes with a small piece of wisdom. And I'm not joking. While this one may seem like a meme or a joke, there are others that have extremely high interest and valuation tied to the assets themselves. Mike Winkelmann, or otherwise known as Beeple-Crap on Instagram, has recently become one of the wealthiest artists currently living after selling his NFT artwork for over $69 million. This art piece was basically a collage of his first 5,000 photos, where he has been challenging himself for a few years now to upload one picture of 3D art on Instagram every single day. And so basically this is just the first 5,000 days all put into a collage that was bought for $69,000. However, it doesn't only end there for him with that $69 million. Obviously he has to do taxes, so he's probably not making all that much, but however, he did publicize that he included a 10% cut to be sent to him every time ownership changes in the future, like I just discussed earlier. So anytime this person wants to sell this $69 million piece of art today for something tomorrow, he will still be gaining income off of that. The second example that I feel that fits pretty well here to describe what is happening, and it's kind of shocking when I first found out about it, is NBA Top Shots. And it's basically a website that is owned by the NBA that is kind of getting in on the action of NFTs, but in a different sense from art. So the way that the NBA is kind of getting into this is through video clips and kind of highlight reels of players in their games. Like a clip of LeBron James was sold recently for dunking in a certain game. I'm not a huge NBA fan, so I wasn't sure which one, but it basically sold for $200,000. It's also important to know that you don't even own the rights to these video clips, so it's still under the NBA copyright. So they still have full ownership. It's just more or less that you're owning a digital piece of history rather than the actual piece itself, because everybody can still see this video online and it's free to view. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to pay the owner, the quote unquote owner of the NFT, what it is. It is literally more or less similar to an art collection. To me, these mini clips seem like a digital format of physical baseball cards from back in the day. Although there were thousands of baseball cards of this player and that player, the digital NFT asset rarity kind of comes in when if that player signs their own baseball card. There's only X amount of those copies in the world. However, the difference here is that that X amount of copies is stated from the very beginning and it'll never change. So that pro player can never go back and sign another card. It's just how it is forever. Even the Gronk is getting in on the GIF football cards. He's creating himself in his highlight reels of major catches and major games and selling them to people on these websites like OpenSea. And this card right here was actually auctioned for over $10,000 and then resold for $1,000. Like, what is happening? I'll take some free money if you're handing it out. Like, that's $9,000 down the drain for probably just overhypedness. I don't know, man. However, in Beeple's case, it has been described that the rarity of his art is similar to the original painting of the Mona Lisa. There's only one of the original. Those who take pictures or print posters of the original Mona Lisa can easily be seen that they're not the same. Similar to Beeple's art, there are specific hashes built into the code that says this is the one of one that was sold, where the rest of the internet postings are all the poster and picture versions. And like I said in the intro, digital art history is also being included. Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, is auctioning off his first, just setting up my Twitter, and plans to transfer it immediately to Bitcoin and send it to Africa's response fund for COVID-19. Another very interesting use case of NFTs currently is the video game world, and I would like to kind of mix that in with the real estate world as well. In researching this topic, I found a rabbit hole of information, and I do not think I have enough time to really go over that all in this single video. So I'm already planning on making a video dedicated to this specific topic in more detail in the future. But for now, this will just be a basic overview of the video game / real estate world right now. So if you did hear about the NFTs way back in the day in 2017, way back in the day, there were CryptoKitties. This was like the first NFT video game that ever launched. It's debatable. I think there was like another one, but this was like the main one that got a lot of traction and kind of started a lot of talk in the media and whatnot. These CryptoKitties are very similar to Tamagotchis back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. That little digital handheld device where you had a digital pet where you took care of it, you fed it, you did whatever. I never had one. I think I had some friends that had one, but you get the idea, right? So essentially, CryptoKitties was very similar to this, only it's not even a handheld device that has a digital pet. It's a digital service that has a digital pet, and it has financial possibilities for you as well, where you can make money off these digital pets. The basis for the players was to collect, purchase, breed, and sell virtual cats. And this game also included mini games within the cats themselves and different puzzles that you could solve. It also, in my opinion, has a lot of similarities to that one app game back in early 2000s, Dragon City, where the end goal is to have like a large amount of rare dragons, and you got those from breeding different kinds of dragons together, like a green dragon with a red dragon. You got like whatever. The only difference is that you can sell these cats for money, where the dragon game was kind of just for fun. Each single cat is different from one another, so there is literally no duplicates at all. So having a very rare one is a one of one kind. There's a lot of demand for that if the game is doing well. And I know CryptoKitties was back in 2017, but now I'm going to talk about new games that are coming out as of recently that kind of mimic the same style of MMORPG games, but it has a very strong hint of real estate mixed into it. These games include The Sandbox, Somnium Space, and Decentraland. And for simplicity's sake, I am not going to focus on Decentraland or Somnium Space and only on Sandbox. The reasons for this is Decentraland, I found out through further research, has its own entire political structure / movement occurring internally. So it just sounded like another rabbit hole that I did not want to get into for this video. So I might do that in the future, along with the Somnium Space, because that is a virtual world. The VR headset is required to be in that world. So that's also interesting in its own way as well. So with that being said, I'm just going to be looking at the Sandbox game. And the reason that I liked it so much is because the simplicity of the map, and there's also a picture of the ownership who owns certain plots of lands. These style of games all have one similar trait across the board. Not that they're only NFTs, but they are also very heavily reliant on digital real estate properties. So essentially these games, like the Sandbox, are selling virtual lands in waves, and buyers are able to place a stake of virtual ownership on a plot of land. This game's plots are 96 by 96 blocks with a height of 128 blocks, just for reference. And I don't really, it's still in development, the game itself, so I don't really know how large a block is. I'm just thinking maybe like a Minecraft world or something where 96 by 96, you know. These lands can also be sold and traded and bought on the secondary market. So like the OpenSea website, I did some research and looked up what the prices are for these lands, and they are wild. Some are $700 for one little plot, some are $4,000. I think it might depend on where you're located and like what different neighbors that you have next to you. So basically when a buyer actually buys these blocks and this plot of land on this website, you are essentially now able to develop your own little mini world within your plotted land and your boundaries. So you can start developing like your own video game storyline, different activities, mini games, whatever you want to do really. The developer itself also sells digital assets like dragons or like chests. I don't know. It looks kind of bare bones to me, to be honest, at the moment, but there are assets that are also backed by the NFT blockchain and everything. So given that, there's also limitations on how many of these black dragon things that anybody can own. I think it's around 200 last time I looked. So if somebody were to buy all 200, obviously they could sell them for much higher if this game gains traction and popularity and whatnot. The entire map itself is also using the blockchain technology. So when the programmer first initiated this world, there's only a set limit amount of squares that can be purchased. So that's also increasing the rarity. So it's kind of creating this like gold rush sensation for a lot of people. I'm sure you've already noticed from what I'm showing you here in the map itself, but there's some major partnerships that with this single game already has, such as Atari, Roller Coaster Tycoon, Tesla, you know, of course, Tesla and Elon Musk are in here, Care Bears, and the Smurfs. Those last two are kind of off-putting. I was like, what, why? But you know, we'll see in the future. I can see Roller Coaster Tycoon developing a Roller Coaster Tycoon style amusement park for people to go into, and Atari could develop like mini games themselves. And that large parcel / state that is owned by Atari is amounted to around $900,000 as of right now, using the average of the secondary market cost per land. One last thought that I have on the video game industry area with NFTs is that it seems like there's a pretty heavy divide between financial investors and video game enthusiasts. It kind of doesn't really cross paths that well, in my personal opinion. I've played games a lot in the past and whatnot, and it seems that it's more or less used for real estate purchasing and reselling at the moment more than anything else. Like the game itself in the Sandbox doesn't really look like it has a whole lot to offer. I really see it as acting more or less as like an asset holder that you can then resell in the future. But at the same time, I really don't feel like there will be a giant player base around this single game because of the way it is currently being developed. And if nobody's there to play it, I mean, they might just end up selling it, and then if they sell it and they back out, somebody else might back out, and then their whole valuation of the entire thing falls. So I don't know. There seems to be a large disconnect between the two parties of investors and players. So I'll probably talk about that in a separate video if you're interested. And for the last area that really drew my interest and a lot of other people's interest is the music industry. I personally feel like the musicians, out of everything that we talked about today, are going to be able to use this technology the most effectively as of right now. To have an NFT successfully sell at any decent price, there needs to be a demand for the product. If I were to make an art piece, nobody's going to want to buy it because, for one, I don't have any name in the game for making art. But the main idea is that you need to have an audience already there, that people are backing you and want to buy something from you. And as for musicians, they have a very large audience that listen to their music, and it's very easy to become a fan of them. And because there is such a large following for some of these artists, they really have a chance to fully or partially break away from music labels. This gives the music artist a lot more options rather than having the standardized old school music industry to fame. Now they might be able to do an alternative route that provides them more financial gain in the future. These packages of the NFTs could include selling like limited edition tracks, samples, and rights for music. Other options could include added on bonuses with the artists that they can set independently, such as the highest bidder gets collaboration privileges with them on their next track. They get backstage passes if they purchase this NFT that includes yada yada yada, but that's like a bonus on top of what they're purchasing. And I know I stated earlier in the video that NFTs really don't have like the buyers don't have full ownership of that NFT, but ultimately that ownership is set by the seller. So with the NBA Top Shots specifically, the ownership for all those clips is still within the NBA. However, given with music artists, they are able to set whether or not the ownership gets transferred to the purchasing party. Artists who provide NFT options for samples that they've created, it provides buyers an opportunity to not only receive licensings to use it, but ownership of it. And similar to the trading cards for the football player Gronk and like how it's signed and not signed, in the music world, these tracks and samples kind of can be seen as limited edition vinyls back in the day, where there was only a select amount of copies of vinyl records that had signatures or like different variants of them, like gold or platinum packaging or whatnot. Those have rarity in themselves, similar to these new digital art and music creations. I personally think that the digital art side of it is extremely volatile. Digital art more so than the other two. There are just so many factors at play that provide risk to the parties involved. First, it's a fairly new technology. Fraud in itself has been a problem for this digital and crypto art, and especially with the government so far behind regulation, like they still hardly know what Facebook is. It will probably take some time before it can even be addressed or understood and put into some form of regulation for holding people accountable. As it sits right now, it's really ultimately up to these like OpenSea to allow these purchases to occur and also to assist in preventing art fraud to maintain their reliability and legitimacy. However, because users can stay anonymous on the blockchain, it provides risk to buyers who may not have the full knowledge on how to research whether or not the seller is actually who they say they are. For instance, I could go on there right now and upload a picture that I have never created or don't own off of Pinterest and then just say I'm the user. Because it's anonymous, there's really no way to find out whether or not I am the actual user or not through deep research on the company side of things. Actually, a case of this occurred with the digital artist by the name of Karan Sin, who notified the company Rarible that his art was being sold without his permission. Although this was caught early on, it proves that the risk is high because human involvement had to actively communicate and discover to seek out the fraud and take steps to remove it from their site, where it's something that many people might think that it should happen automatically without human involvement. Another facet of the risk in this digital art industry right now is that there's a lot of hopes and wants and wishes for these digital art pieces that people are buying to go up in value. This of course is like any other investment, but the one thing that I see being extremely volatile is the fact that it seems to be more or less of a hyper market. I don't know if that's really a thing. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but that's what I'm calling it. What I mean by that is like the more that people talk about it, the higher the sales will be for everything within the industry. But as soon as people stop talking about it, it's out of the news and people kind of get bored of it, all those prices will drop, and whoever is left with that end hype will eventually be out of luck and they won't be able to sell it for anything profitable. Another level of risk entirely is just the crypto world itself. Like, to be able to purchase an NFT, you have to use Ethereum at the moment for the majority of it. And to purchase Ethereum, we all know cryptocurrencies right now are extremely volatile. Like just a few months ago, Bitcoin was at $3,000. Now it's at $55,000. Ethereum kind of trails that exact same spectrum, and that whole market might change the valuation of the digital asset separately from the digital asset's demand. As you see, there's a lot of points of failure that can happen within your investment if you're going into it with an investment attitude. If you're going into it as a new technology and you're interested in it, go for it. But personally, I think that the investment side of this is extremely risky, especially because there's not really a lot of options for low valued purchases at the moment. From what I've seen, the lowest that you can really go is like around $50 for like a really bad piece of art. Not throwing shade out there to anybody, but there's not really much that you can buy for really anything worth it. It's like a gold rush right now for people developing things in hopes that somebody might purchase their item. There's a lot of trash out there right now that people are trying to trick into getting sold and whatnot. Also, if you're interested in not just buying it but selling it, you also have to take into consideration that to sell it, you really do need to have some sort of following, because no one's gonna, with the amount of supply that's going into these third-party websites, you don't have to do anything. The barrier to entrance is very low. You just have to make an account and then just pay a small fee of $50 if that's small to you. Who knows? There's a lot of people throwing art out right now, and it's just kind of just all over the place regarding quality, legitimacy. So being a seller, you really need to have some sort of following to really start you off the ground if you're wanting to sell it. Your product or NFT is just going to get stuck with all the other ones in the middle, or at the bottom rather. Well, here we are. That was a lot, not gonna lie. That was a lot more than I thought it was gonna be. I didn't think this was going to be a 25-minute video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It was a lot of work to edit, but I think I'm learning a lot regarding the editing world and how to structure videos in the future. So hopefully it will be condensed a little bit, so we won't have to wait here for 25 minutes for me to get to the point talking about whatever. Editing yourself is very hard, especially when the video is 25 minutes long. You got to hear your own voice back and rewatch yourself and all these little things that you do that you cannot stand, but nobody probably notices. But I'm at the point where, whatever, who cares? But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'm excited to start doing some other topics here in the future if I have some time. Finals week is coming up soon, so, you know, who knows about that. But yeah, thank you for spending some time with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.